Running back Ashton Jeanty seems to be on a lot of folks' minds, including the Raiders GM's son. That's right. That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 2nd, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's great. You're checking us out by way of the YouTube page. That's also great. We do appreciate both. Either way, however you consume the show is fantastic. So we shout you out. Your consistent support is what makes this show continue to grow each and every day. And you know that that's all it's all about. My man Ari does a fantastic job behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good on the YouTube page. Really takes a lot of pride in his work. And again, we appreciate that as well. If you're on Twitter, you can check him out. He's at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you ever want to be a part of the show, no matter what you got to say, it is all good. The Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line is 707-654-4693. Wide open like some old school TV antennas. Matter of fact, that's how we'll close out the show. Coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. So much feedback to get with. I mean, we had a lot of calls left over from yesterday, so I'm going to try to get as many of those in as possible, plus a lot of new stuff too. So there's a lot of feedback. We'll try to hustle through those calls and texts. We'll do that in segment number 3. Segment number 2, been talking about the Pro Football Focus, the mock draft simulator, right? And of course, who doesn't like to do that? Problem is, when you sit down and start working on the mock draft simulator, you go down a rabbit hole that you can't get out of. I probably did, I want to say like 4 or 5 different mock drafts, 7-round mock drafts on Pro Football Focus's, mock draft simulator. And it's so funny. I just started going down a rabbit hole and I was trying to get different starts to the draft. And so multiple times I would get the same start or the same player there at number 6. And I didn't want to do that because I wanted to see what the different outcomes would look like. So I'll go over what I did in segment number 2, just a handful of the drafts that I did. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. And really, it all has to do with running back Ashton Jeanty. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, off top, GM John Spytek, head coach Pete Carroll, other GMs, other head coaches, other owners were all in Florida for the last 2 days at the owners' meetings. Well, GM John Spytek sat down with SiriusXM Radio and was talking about Ashton Jeanty, and it's no secret that the Raiders are linked to Ashton Jeanty at number 6. That's a foregone conclusion, right? Everyone has basically put that in just about in pen that he's going to go to the Raiders. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Thought this was hilarious what GM John Spytek had to say about his son as it pertains to Ashton Jeanty. Check it out.
My oldest son has made it no secret that if we don't pick Ashton Jeanty at 6, that he's walking out of the family and he's going to find somebody else. Probably whoever takes Ashton. I think he's motivated.
He's a free agent for fandom right now.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, Jack is motivated by fantasy football and touchdowns in fantasy football, not necessarily all of team building. But I love that my son loves the draft process at 10 years old, and maybe he's starting to fall in love with the scouting process. I hate it a little bit too because I know the life that he's signing up for, but the passion that he has. And he walked right into our building and basically told Mark Davis, like, if my dad doesn't take Ashton Jeanty, he's doing a bad job.
Is he in there? Is he in there buzzing film with you when you're watching Jeanty?
No, he goes on YouTube and he watches it himself. So
I love it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Jack, those are highlights. You got to watch all the plays.
Complete game.
Yeah, don't be swayed by highlights.
So basically, he's going to walk out of the family if his dad doesn't draft Ashton Jeanty at number 6. Now, there's many different reasons why he would say that on SiriusXM Radio, where everyone could pick that up and everyone can hear that. It could have been an April Fool's joke. It could have been just him making a joke or trying to drum up a little bit of interest in maybe a team that really is eyeing Ashton Jeanty to trade up to number 6 because, well, you better get up there and go get him or else the Raiders are going to take him. Or he could be serious, right? I mean, who knows what the gist of it was, but I could see his son, at the age that he is, as he said, 10 years old, sitting there looking at highlights and saying, hey, Ashton Jeanty's a player that you need to draft. I thought that was pretty cool. But it's funny because it led into a conversation that I had on my radio show on Tuesday, and this actually came from a conversation I had on Monday. What do I mean by that? Well, Ed Graney from ESPN Las Vegas, which is our sister station. He's also from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, so he works side by side with Vinny Bonsignore. VegasNation.com covers all the local sports and local teams here in Las Vegas. He's always a guest on my show every Monday. So he asked me the question that apparently him and Tyler Bischoff were talking about on their show, the Press Box, early on the morning on Monday morning about Ashton Jeanty as it pertains to him having a big-time season for the Raiders, similar to Brock Bowers. He posed a really good question. Here it is. Check it out.
It's interesting. As we were talking this morning about it, Jeanty could come in and be Bowers. Mm-hmm. He could come in and have that kind of year, and I think Bowers is going to have another great year because he's just so talented and everything. I guess then the question becomes, as you said, offensive tackle, help defensively where they need help defensively. Does Ashton Jeanty having a great year at a running back position mean more wins? I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's more about, like you said, protecting Geno with offensive linemen and how Geno plays and, who all his complement of receivers are and all that. I think there's a lot more goes into it. But it was a good question, I thought, that we raised in terms of if he comes in and it's Bowers, does that still mean that they will not get more wins than they would have if they'd gone another position? I can't answer the question, but I think it's a good one because he is a running back. I do think he came in and be great. But, Bowers came in and be great, and they're picking 6.
Right.
So there's a lot. I think there's a lot of truth to both sides of that. I just think that, if you get Jeanty, he'll have a really, really good year. I just can't say with any kind of affirmation that, it will mean, 7 wins more than 6, 8 wins more than 7. I can't answer that question. I know he wouldn't, running back's not going to be worth any more in the odds. You're not going to change their odds because of a running back. So we'll have to see. But he is a dude. There's no question about that. And he's, the best running back in the draft. So maybe that's a lot of the reasons people have him to go in number 6 to the Raiders.
So that was Ed Graney, and just going ahead and explaining how the conversation came about. But through the question out there, if he has a big-time season for the Raiders like Brock Bowers did his rookie year, and remember, we all talked about Brock Bowers being potential rookie of the year, is that going to lead to more wins? And look, Ashton Jeanty is not going to win games by himself. We know that football is the ultimate team sport, but we've also seen Josh Jacobs lead the league in rushing for the Silver and Black, and they only got 8 wins. We saw Brock Bowers have a phenomenal rookie year, and they only got 4 wins. Again, they don't all do it by themselves. We get that. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but it did get me thinking. So I had that topic on my radio show on Tuesday. And it's funny, it's organically as we were kind of working through it together. Raider Nation was calling in, texting in, tweeting in, whatever the case may be. And we were talking about Ashton Jeanty and what he could bring to the table as a running back and how he can help the Raiders, win more games. And look, I think Pete Carroll alone is going to help this team win more games. But again, organically, it's funny. It just led to, well, what did the Raiders do on the ground last season in 2024? I knew they didn't have a very good season. Raider Nation, they ran for 1,357 yards. 1,357 yards and 10 total touchdowns on the ground. Alexander Madison was their leading rusher for 420 yards, followed by Amir Abdullah, 311 yards. Sincere McCormick, remember, he didn't even get in very long, and then he was injured. He had 183 yards. Zamir White, who we thought was going to be the lead rusher, had 183 yards. And then Gardner Minshew, the quarterback, had 58 yards, and everyone else was less than that. And there was, Bowers, Myers, right, a couple other guys here and there. But it led total to 1,357 total yards. There were 5 running backs, individual running backs in 2024 that rushed for more yards than the Raiders did as a team. Saquon Barkley, 2,005 yards and 13 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, 1,921 yards and 16 touchdowns. Bijan Robinson, who I kind of look at Ashton Jeanty and say he could be very Bijan Robinson-like, 1,456 yards, 14 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor, 1,431 yards and 11 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, 1,412 yards and 16 touchdowns. Then there's the Raiders. So all those guys I just mentioned ran for more yards and touchdowns than the Raiders as a team did in 2024. And again, it's not just the running back. There's a lot that goes into that. Barkley obviously has the best offensive line in football, right? There's good quarterback play. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Good coaching, all that. It all plays a role. The Raiders had 1,357 total yards and 10 touchdowns. And then who was right behind them? And this is not to add insult to injury. It feels like I know that I'm cutting you with 1,000 paper cuts, right? Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Josh Jacobs. Yeah, former Raider Josh Jacobs. 1,329 yards and 15 total touchdowns. So he was about 30 yards less than the Raiders as a team and 5 more touchdowns. Just on the ground. Had a couple receiving touchdowns as well. But just on the ground, 1,329 yards and 15 touchdowns. It's funny when I went through that, and again, it was all organic. It wasn't like I meant to go to the check out the stats and see where they all lined up. But as the conversation came through in real time, we just started spitballing and realized that's how bad the Raiders were on the ground. And I knew they were bad. It's not like I didn't watch every game or was at every home game. But it's just when you put it in perspective like that, it almost, and I said this on the radio, it almost solidified Ashton Jeanty at number 6. Like, yeah, you know what? If he's there, go get him. For every reason I just gave you, for 1,357 reasons and 10 touchdowns reasons why, go get him. Right? This dude ran for over 2,000 yards in college. And I know Boise State in college is a lot different animal than the NFL. But, man, that was, if you want to talk about something that was eye-opening, that was. And then I ended up going down the rabbit hole, and you never want to do this, about, draft picks that were selected right after the Raiders pick. And, of course, I was looking at Derrick Henry and thinking, man, remember Derrick Henry was in the draft in 2016? Remember he was drafted in the second round? Remember who the Raiders got in the second round, one pick before Tennessee? Jihad Ward. And I'm not saying Jihad Ward's not a bad player. I mean, he's not Derrick Henry. He's still in the league, so there's kudos to him for that. But Derrick Henry was selected one pick after Jihad Ward. I know that because I was in Chicago when it happened, and I was pounding the table hoping that it was going to be Derrick Henry, right? That was one of the first drafts that was on the road. So we were there in Chicago for that. Jihad Ward went to college, I want to say in Illinois. And when nobody cheered for him when he got selected by the Raiders in the second round, I thought, oh, this is bad. And then of course, Derrick Henry went off the board next. So, yeah, I didn't mean to, again, cut death by 1,000 paper cuts. I know it felt like I just went down that rabbit hole. I apologize. But, yeah, that to me almost solidified the fact that, you know what, you better go get Ashton Jeanty at number 6 when you start to look at, those kind of numbers when it comes to the running back position. But I did go through the mock draft simulator. We've been talking about mock drafts a lot when it comes to the Locked On NFL mock draft, when it comes to the ultimate mock draft I'm doing on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness on Radio Nation Radio 920. I went through the PFF mock draft simulator. I'm going to go ahead and let you know the results of the top 4 that I did. Yeah, I did more than that, but I'll give you the top 4. We'll do it coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Gametime. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets should not be stressful, and that's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. And there's a lot going on right now. Obviously, we know hoops is going on. Baseball is back, so if you have a favorite baseball team, maybe you're an A's fan and you want to go and see them in Sacramento. Not I, but maybe you, right? It's all good. Either way, Gametime can hook you up. And it's not just sports. It's concerts, comedy, theater, whatever the case may be. They've got great deals. They have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And they've got the seat views. So if you've never been to that stadium in Sacramento, you've never been there, and you want to see what your seat is going to look like, yeah, you can do that as well. No surprise fees and a lowest price guarantee you can book with total confidence. Right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. My man, ABA Ivan Davis, he chimed in on the show on yesterday, and he went through the 7-round mock draft. He understood the assignment. I've been talking about it now for a couple days here on the show, so I wanted to make sure I understood the assignment, and I completed the assignment, which is a lot better than I did when I was in school. Didn't complete too many assignments, but this one I did, and this one was a lot of fun. Problem is when you go to the PFF mock draft simulator and you start to go down that rabbit hole, you're like, oh, that was pretty easy. That was pretty good. Well, let me try it this way. Well, let me try it this way. Well, let me try it this way. Raider Nation, I probably spent a good hour working on this mock draft simulator. I'm going to give you my top 4. They weren't fantastic, right? There was some that I just made the decision because I made the decision. There were some repeat players that I selected. I tried to do the best that I can, and I also tried to get different starts. Like at number 6, I wanted to get Ashton Jeanty for one. I wanted to get Armand Membu for one because that's what we've been talking about, right? If a quarterback was available, I was like, okay, I'll get a quarterback there at number 6. Well, that didn't happen with all the ones that I went through, all the mock drafts that I went through. But what I will say is I thought I did pretty good. I got some really good players. And you know how these things go. We don't know if there's any chance that these guys are actually available in like it has in this mock draft when we select them. But sometimes it's fun to kind of get an idea and see the different outcomes and the different grades that you get. So as I mentioned, go ahead and feel free to do it. Hit us up on the text line, on the phone line, 707-654-4693. Let me know your results, but I'm going to go over it really quickly. So my very first one, and no joke, this is my first one, which is what made me think that this is easy. I can do this. I could be a GM. At number 6, I got cornerback wide receiver Travis Hunter. I got an A+ for that because who saw Travis Hunter being there available at number 6? And it's funny because Shador was there at number 6, and I was like, nope. Travis Hunter's there. I'm going to get him. And I mentioned that, right? If there's any chance that Travis Hunter's there at number 6, I'm going to get him regardless. I don't care who's there. He's the guy. So I got him at number 6 overall. Number 37 overall, running back Omarion Hampton. So, okay, now I got a cornerback / wide receiver and a running back. Check, check. Really well. I got an A on that one. Number 68 overall, defensive line, Shamar Turner. I got an A. Look, I'm cooking with grease. A+, A. What could go wrong? Well, just keep going. Number 108, cornerback, Jacob Parrish, B+. All right, it's almost an A. Not too bad. 143, wide receiver, Kyle Williams, B-. 180, finally got a quarterback. 180, I finally got a quarterback, Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. Got an A- there. I got him in the, 6th round? That's not bad. And again, don't think that he's really going to be there available in the 6th round, but I got Hunter, Hampton, Turner, Parrish, and Williams all before I got a quarterback. And Kyle McCord is a really good one. Reason why I got an A-. Number 213, I went back to the wide receiver position. Ricky White got a B+. He's a young man out of UNLV. Then I stuck with the wide receiver 2 picks later at 215, Jimmy Horn Jr., B-. And then, I got to yell Roll Tide one time, right? So at number 222, the last pick in the draft, for the Raiders, safety Malachi Moore out of Alabama. I had to yell Roll Tide, and I got my lowest grade on that one, a C. I was like, I got him in the 7th round. How do I get a C? And I got him in the 7th round. So basically, they're saying Malachi Moore could be an undrafted guy. 222 was too high. But with that one, I thought I did well. Travis Hunter, Omarion Hampton, Shamar Turner, Jacob Parrish, Kyle Williams, Kyle McCord, Ricky White, Jimmy Horn, Malachi Moore. Overall grade was an A. Cornerback, wide receiver, I got what? Well, I won't call Travis Hunter a wide receiver. We know what he is. I got 1 running back. I got a defensive lineman. I got a cornerback, 2 cornerbacks, honestly. I got 3 wide receivers, a quarterback, and a safety. That's not bad. I didn't get any linebackers. That's the one thing I was looking at. I was looking at a linebacker and I was looking at offensive lineman, and I didn't get them. But I got a really good grade with the A. So I thought, hey, this is easy. Anyone could do it. Let's run it back. So then I went Armand Membu, tackle. He started off things, B-. Then I got a running back, Quinshawn Judkins, D+. Then I got a quarterback, Jalen Milroe, D+. Then I got a cornerback, Kobe Bryant, got a B- on that. Wide receiver, Kyle Williams again, a B-. Defensive lineman, Tonka Hemingway, I got a B+ there, not bad. Wide receiver, Ricky White again, got a B+ again. Running back, Ollie Gordon II, he's out of Oklahoma State. I got an A there. Getting him, late in the draft. Linebacker Jay Higgins, I got a B on that, and my overall grade was a B-. So one draft to the other, I went from an A to a B-. Obviously, that's a big drop-off. The D+ didn't help. I reached for Judkins in the 2nd round. I reached for Milroe in the 3rd round, but I felt like the Raiders needed a quarterback, and if I didn't get one there, I was going to have to, settle a little bit later on, and I didn't think like Kyle McCord would be there like he was at 180 in my first mock draft. So, all right, A, B-, not bad. 3rd one, let's get Ashton Jeanty first. All right, there you go. Running back Ashton Jeanty, B+, not bad. Cornerback Trey Amos, B+. Cornerback Jalen Milroe, D+. Linebacker Jeffrey Bassa, C+. Running back Trevor Etienne, B-. Wide receiver Ricky White, I got a D-. I don't know why I got a D- that time. I got a B+. Both times I got Ricky White. I go for the trifecta, and I get hit with the D-. So there's that. Linebacker Teddy Buchanan, all my Cal Bear fans will be appreciative of that. C. And then safety Malachi Moore, C-. Wide receiver Jimmy Horn Jr., a B. Overall grade, I'm still rocking with a B-, even though I got a D+ for Milroe, a D- for Ricky White, and I got, multiple C's. But somehow that all worked out to being a B-. Still not bad. Ashton Jeanty was a B+ at 6. So I said, all right, let me try my luck one more time. So then I went defensive tackle Mason Graham, A+. Cornerback Trey Amos, B+. Quarterback Jalen Milroe, Roll Tide, D+. Look, we've been talking about Milroe a lot, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to get him. And every time I get him, it's a D+. Cornerback Jacob Parrish, B+. Running back Trevor Etienne, a B-. Again, defensive lineman Tonka Hemingway, a B+. Guard Miles Frazier, because I felt like I needed to have an interior guard, interior lineman. I got that. I got a C+. And then 2 wide receivers. Wide receiver Jimmy Horn Jr., a B-. And then wide receiver Will Shepard, B. 2 guys from Colorado. I got an overall grade of a B+. But it just goes to show as I go through those 4, and I promise you I went through many, many more. I spent at least an hour working on this thing. this thing could go in so many different directions. I got my ultimate mock draft going on my radio show, and I had Teron Davenport from ESPN pick for the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, he went Cam Ward number 1. And then I had my guy Emmett Golden from ESPN Cleveland and ESPN Radio pick number 2 for the Cleveland Browns. And he went with Travis Hunter, and it blew my mind. It blew my mind. I just thought it was a foregone conclusion that it was going to be either a quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, or it was going to be Abdul Carter, and he went in a whole different direction. When we were zigging, he was zagging. So it just shows you that so many different things could happen in the draft. It is all one big crapshoot. There's a lot of different ways you could put this thing together and still come away with a really good roster, but that was just four different options out of all the different ones I did. Those are the best 4 that I had in that mock draft. So again, it's a little bit of fun, but if you are on a time crunch, don't go do it. Don't go do it. If you're trying to, get out and whatever, like you're at work and you only got 15 minutes left and you want to make sure that you wrap up the day, don't go down that rabbit hole, because I promise you it'll take a lot more than 15 minutes. You won't have it, and then you'll be mad because you'll look up and you'll be like, why have I been at work an extra hour? This doesn't make any sense. Don't do it. Wait till you have some free time on your hands. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts, 707-654-4693. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts, draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. I'm going to try to hustle through these as much as possible. We got a lot of feedback. I want to try to get us caught up. We'll start off with a text from Mr. Crisp. What's up, Q? The talk lately has been about bringing Renfro back. Listening to the show yesterday, you were pretty excited about it. Please help me understand why. I know I'm getting older. My memory isn't what it used to be, but last I remember, he was hurt a lot and his production was way down. He wasn't even in the league last year. All I can see him getting out of that is being older. Maybe I'm missing something. That's Mr. Crisp. Hey, thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. And no, you're not wrong. I mean, he was out of the league last year, but he's still young. He's still a 29-year-old dude. I think that with a year removed from the league, he has a chance to get healthy, both mentally and physically. We know he's a hard worker. We know that the way that his, career ended with the Raiders wasn't really right. A lot of that had to do with injuries. A lot of that had to do with just mental state of mind. Also, I don't think he was a very good fit with Josh McDaniels. So I think if you're looking for an extra wide receiver, I'm not saying sign him as a number 1. I'm just saying out of the options that are out there as veteran wide receivers, when you look at Amari Cooper, you look at Keenan Allen, you look at Tyler Lockett, you look at a couple other guys that are just another guys at this stage of the game, I think he would be a pretty good addition. You don't have to force feed him the ball. If he gets 1 ball a game, or if he gets 3 balls a game, or if he gets 1 ball every other game, he's not going to mind. He's going to go out there and do what he does, and he'll find a way to get open. So I just think that he would really help being a nice security blanket for Geno Smith. But again, I think it's a 1 year, maybe a prove-it deal. It's not like you're breaking the bank. You're not giving him Stephon Diggs money, right? Stephon Diggs just got, $63 million from the Patriots? You're not doing anything like that. It would just be, like a 1 year prove-it deal, give him an opportunity to go out there and compete. And, obviously he's a veteran. He's been there, done that. He's a fan favorite. I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that. But I understand, because the last year he played, he was banged up quite a bit. I think that year out of the league last year probably helps him more than hurts him. But thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Georgia Raider. He's calling to talk about what Trey Wingo said about value pick and the fact that there's a lot of supply at the running back position. And then also Mike T talking about 3 to 4 meaningful contributors. Here's Georgia Raider.
It's Georgia Raider. Just wanted to call in and definitely don't think you're mediocre or accept mediocrity. Definitely think you're a realist with a hint of optimism, driven from the fact of how much negativity is always coming from Raiders fans because of the lack of success. So I think that's why a lot of people enjoy your podcast, because of the realism perspective that you bring. So we do appreciate that. From last week's Trey Wingo, he talked about value picks. I think we need to maybe define or elaborate on what that meant. The one caller talked about the running back position, us not re-signing it after 4 years or opting for the 5th year. So that would drop the value of that pick. He talked about using that as a commodity. There's a lot of running backs in the draft, so there's a lot of supply. So the demand wouldn't be very high. I get Jeanty's maybe very elite, but a lot of people would be okay with not taking him because they were going to be okay with the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th running backs in the draft. So I think talking about what's that mean? What is the what did Trey Wingo be my value in the pick, not necessarily drafting the player. And then the last part was define meaningful contributor. We talked about what's the goal at the end of the draft. I think it was Tannenbaum was talking about he wants to get 3 to 4 meaningful contributors. And I think we were stretching a little bit on who our meaningful contributors were in the previous draft. I'll give you Bowers, JPJ, and Glaze. It's still early. It's 1 year, right? You looked at the year before, like you were reaching for DCAM. Like playing on a bad football team is not a meaningful contributor. So I wouldn't give you that guy. I wouldn't even stretch to think Michael Mayer is a meaningful contributor. Maybe Trey Tucker and maybe Ja'Cory Bennett. And then I don't know. Is Aiden O'Connell a meaningful contributor? I know he started, but there's a lot of players that would have started on our team. So those are things that I think would be good to define to really get an idea of what we got. So, but still thinking as far as the draft, I still want to trade back. We got too many holes. So appreciate you as always, Q. Thanks. Bye. Go Raiders.
Georgia Raider, thanks for the call. Appreciate you as always, my man. You bring up some great points, right? Especially when it comes to the running back position and the supply, right? There's so many different running backs available in this draft, and that's why I feel like the pick is so tough. Ashton Jeanty makes all the sense in the world for every reason that we've mentioned, right? Especially what I was talking about in segment number 1 with all the deficiencies that the Raiders had at the running game in 2024. But when you look at the class, it's really deep. You heard what John Spytek said on yesterday's show when he's saying, you're not going to judge a player based off his position. You're not going to devalue him because of that, but you also have to look at supply and demand. So I think that you bring up a really good point. And that's why I asked about an offensive lineman. Could the value, and that's what Trey was talking about when he's talking about value, and the offensive lineman might be more valuable than the running back because the offensive lineman might be your guy for the next 10 years. And if he is, all of a sudden you're like, wow, the guy you selected in the first round of 2025 is still with you in 2035, right? I'm not saying he would be, but you just never know, right? When did Colton Miller get selected? 2017, I believe, 2017, 2018. Yeah, he was John Gruden's first pick. So that was going into the 2018 year. And it's 2025, and he's still kicking, right? He's the only one that's getting extra contracts. So, I mean, that's why the value could be there. As far as meaningful contributors, and when I was talking about last year, I wasn't going back multiple years, but when I was talking about last year, what the Raiders got, definitely meaningful contributor from Brock Bowers, definitely from JPJ, and definitely from DJ Glaze, as you mentioned. But I also said, when I brought up DeCam Richardson, I said, you might not consider them quality reps, but he got a ton of reps his rookie year. So all he got is in-game experience. So again, it wasn't great, but I think that was a meaningful reps. If for no other reason, he'll have an opportunity to go in and compete in training camp and already have an understanding of what the game is like. There's nothing you can never make up what game reps are. It's like doing a live radio show, right? You can never make up a live radio show, and I can never be prepared to do it unless I'm actually doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, the more I do it, theory is I should get better. Now, if I don't, now there's a problem, right? But the more reps I get, the more times I get a chance to be on the radio, the better, more understanding of what I'm trying to do and convey should be the natural progression. Now, I don't always work like that, but that's just anything, right? Whatever you do, whenever you're getting actual real reps, that's going to help you. So DCAM, he got thrown into the deep end last year. It wasn't all great, right? But again, just getting that learning, the opportunity under his belt, I think was a big deal. And I think we can all agree that Ja'Cory Bennett, even when that's going back a year ago, I think that Ja'Cory Bennett was definitely a meaningful contributor. He was one of the best corners in the league last year until he got hurt. His biggest challenge is going to be exactly that, staying healthy. But thanks so much for the call, man. Really good stuff. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, a text from DJ Raider in Arizona. It says, what's up, Q? DJ Raider from Arizona. I love the Ohio State and UT coverage, especially on Howard and Ewers. I'm not a Ewers fan, but Howard could be a good mid-round pickup as a project behind Smith and O'Connell. Speaking of Smith, if the option is there to not give him a contract extension, why hasn't there been a press conference introducing him? Does he have the option to void the trade or sit out if an extension is not done? The whole sequence is just confusing to me and doesn't settle well in my stomach. As always, thanks for your insight. Locked on for life. Go Raiders, just win, baby. That's DJ Raider in Arizona. And yeah, no, he's got 1 year left on his deal. So there's nothing he can do. The Raiders don't technically have to give him an extension. They will, as John Spytek, Pete Carroll, they both mentioned it at the owners' meetings on Monday, that they're going to get it done sooner rather than later. They just haven't gotten it done. And I think, and normally I always say that when you trade for a player that needs an extension, give it to him right away. But apparently that happened so quickly, and that trade had to happen so quickly, they weren't able to hammer out the numbers. They weren't able to hammer out the extension before they actually got it done, because Seattle had to get Geno Smith off their roster so they could bring in Sam Darnold and bring him in as a free agent. So that's why the trade happened so quickly, and they didn't really get an opportunity to get that extension done. But it's going to get done. I wouldn't worry too much about that. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call, pretty lengthy call from Raider Eddie in Denver, calling to ask about a couple quarterbacks that he has on his radar. Here he is, Raider Eddie in Denver.
Hey, what's up? This is Raider Eddie in Denver. I want to get your thoughts on a couple quarterback options for us. I really like Tyler Shuck, and I really like Jackson Dart. First of all, Jackson Dart's 6'2", 220, built really well. He looks like a Bo Nix type of guy in terms of his build. He's a very good athlete, similar to Bo Nix, so he can run much better than a guy like Shedeur. And he is tough like Shedeur, and he's got a really good arm. I think he's got a better than average NFL arm. So I wouldn't mind if the Raiders traded back into the first round to get Jackson Dart if he was there. Another guy that I really like, as I mentioned, Tyler Shuck. This guy's 6'4", I believe, or 6'5", over 220, really good size, really good height, prototypical height and size, something that Shedeur does not have. And I think he could go in the late first. I wouldn't mind the Raiders trading up for him. I know Shuck is a little bit older. I think he's like 25, and I know he has had some injuries. But it does seem like his last season in college he was healthy. And we've talked about other guys with injuries before. In the last draft, we talked about guys with injuries, but we ended up being okay with that. The kid that was drafted by the Falcons, I believe, he had a ton of injuries, but you were all over him. So I'm just curious. I'm hoping you're not going to just brush off Tyler Shuck for the same reason, because you did, like I mentioned, you did like a kid in the last draft with a long history of injuries. So hopefully that's not going to happen with this kid. I really like his play. I really like his arm, Tyler Shuck. I think both of these guys, Dart and Shuck, would be worth trading back into the late first for. So, we'll see what happens, Q, but just curious on your thoughts on these guys. Hopefully you're not going to blow these guys off or brush these guys off as you did with guys like Bo Nix, guys like that I think haven't actually ended up being, so far, pretty decent in the NFL as starters. So, Q, love to hear your thoughts. Raider Eddie in Denver out, and go Raiders.
Thank you for the call, my man. As always, definitely appreciate you. And yeah, Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart, really good prospects and possibilities. I'm not brushing them off. And yes, I did like Michael Penix last year. You're absolutely right about that. But I also didn't think he was going to get picked at number 8. I didn't think he was a top 10 quarterback. If you go back and listen, and all the shows are in the archives, I thought that there was a chance that Michael Penix would make it to round 2. Injuries were a concern, right? He was an older prospect, right? He was banged up quite a bit in Indiana, but never got injured when he went to Washington. So, yeah, that was definitely a possibility. So, yeah, I mean, I did like him. I will definitely not say that I didn't. As far as Dart goes, I think he's going to be gone earlier than expected, right? I mean, I think there was a chance that the Raiders might have been able to, or any other team early in the second round, trade up into the back end of the first round and grab him. But it feels like now he's going to be a top 15 pick, maybe even as high as top 9 to the Saints, right? I mean, Matt Miller from ESPN, who I respect, has him mocked at 26. So maybe if he were to go in that area, that would give credit to your trade up. That's a possibility. Shuck, I've talked to a couple people that really like him. Louis Riddick, I got a lot of respect for him. He's very high on him. I think that we all appreciate his talent evaluating. Harry Douglas, yes, he played for football at Louisville and a longtime NFL wide receiver as well. He's a big fan of him. He covers college football like a glove, so he was able to see him a few times in person. Matt Miller has him mocked number 33 overall to the Browns. So again, that's that sweet spot, right? Anywhere from Jackson Dart at 26 and Tyler Shuck at 33, right? I mean, that could be. So if the Raiders are interested, sure, they can make that move. And look, he was a member of the 2018 recruiting class. He's been at 3 different schools. He was Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon. He went to Texas Tech, and obviously he played really well at Louisville this past season. Big arm, mobility, plenty of experience, and you said it, the injuries are something that play a role. Now, I will say real quick on a side note, I never mentioned Shedeur Sanders one time. You mentioned him 3 times in the call for no reason. Right? I mean, it was cool just to bring up the guys that you wanted to talk about. Shedeur didn't have anything to do with the call. And you mentioned that I blew guys off, and then you mentioned one guy, Bo Nix. And I've admitted that I was wrong on him. I thought he also, like Michael Penix, was probably going to be a round 2 guy. I wasn't too sure about him. He had a ton of experience in college, was in different spots. I just didn't know how good he was going to be. I'm still, to be honest, not 100% sure how good he's going to be. I think he's really good for Sean Payton and what he wants to do, but I'm not sure how good he's going to be in the long haul when it's all said and done. So, I mean, you mentioned one guy. You act like I blew off a ton of dudes. It was just one guy. Just one guy. You mentioned Bo Nix. That was it. So, for every question or statement, it's always followed up by a shot. But it's cool. It's fine. It's your thing. It's a little over the top, but it's your thing. And I appreciate the call. And, hopefully that answers the question on the 2 quarterbacks that you had, Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck. I guess in a nutshell, they're definitely available for the silver and black. Let's get at least one more text in. We'll take this from Raider Mason. What's up, Q? It's Mason in the 937. In regards to your question about Will Johnson at pick number 6, sign me up. I'd love to have a foundational player in that spot, something we haven't had in a long time, going back to Woodson and Asamoah. Look at what the Eagles did last year in doubling up and picking Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. They shorted up the secondary to go along with that monster defensive line and won a Super Bowl. Heck, we all saw DeJean get a pick 6 on Patrick Mahomes in that game. Seemed like the perfect recipe. I think there's enough talent at wide receiver and running back to pick up a couple in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Luther Burden, Trey Harris, Travion Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins would all be great 2nd-round options if available. Let me know your thoughts. Go Raiders. That's from Raider Mason in the 937. Apparently Judkins in the 2nd round is not good. Pro Football Focus gave me a D+ for taking Judkins in the 2nd round. But to your point, Will Johnson, that could end up being the pick, right? We're not talking about him. Everything that you said about Asamoah and Woodson are facts. What you said about the Eagles, right? Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, they knew that their secondary was really lacking, right? They saw their secondary get old fast. Right, big play Slay was still there, but they had James Bradbury as well. It got old in 2023 really quickly in front of their eyes as the season went along, and they decided to address that immediately. You're right, that was great picks, right? They really were. Cooper DeJean was coming off a torn ACL, and they still picked him, and he had impactful plays, including that pick 6 in the Super Bowl. Luther Burden, I like him a lot as a wide receiver. That's a dude that can go and high point a ball. He's got those big hands. He didn't have great quarterback play at Missouri, but he can get it done. There's no doubt about that. Henderson, the running back from Ohio State, he's fantastic as well. I would think if it came down to one of those Ohio State running backs, Judkins or Henderson, I think that Chip would probably lean Henderson because he's the bigger home run hitter. Right. And so that's obviously he wants to make this Raiders offense as explosive as possible. But really good stuff, my man. Definitely appreciate you. Still got a call from Raider Noah in the 801. Got a text from Raider Samp. We'll get that tomorrow. We're somewhat caught up on all the calls and texts, so we'll get back into some more of those tomorrow. We'll have more news and notes. Maybe you can hit me with a couple of your mock drafts if you go through the simulator, and we'll see what else comes up because as we're looking at the calendar, there's not a whole lot of time now. It's about 3 weeks, right, until the Raiders on the clock and everybody's on the clock in round 1 of the upcoming NFL draft from Green Bay. April 24th is when it all gets started. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.